Hey everyone, Cell here. In this video I'll be discussing how best to farm special maps, those being Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, Conqueror, and Synthesis maps. I want to give a quick thanks to everyone that watched the last video and just for the phenomenal support. Keep up the feedback and suggestions and I'll work towards improving my videos. One quick tip before we get started, Elder, Shaper, and Conqueror maps can be rerolled with Orbs of Horizon to change the map and the boss. This is helpful if you have an uneven amount of maps and you want a more even scale of them to run Maven invitations or have clean sets of boss fragments. Now, there are two major strategies to farming special maps, and there's a fairly wide gap between the two. The first one leverages the base chance to get those maps from final map bosses. In short, it's the destructive play strategy. There's a little bit more to it than that, but if you're already familiar with destructive play and have run it a lot in the past, you can probably skip ahead to the next section in the video based on the chapters down below. The final boss of each tier 14 plus map has a flat chance to drop those special maps. This is not influenced by map quantity or anything like that, but there are Atlas passes that double your chance of getting those maps. On screen, I'll show the chance for these maps to drops, as well as the chance to get them if you have the relevant Atlas passives allocated. So for Shaper and Elder Guardian maps, you're looking at 3 or 6% each. Synthesis and Conqueror maps are looking at 2 or 4% each. Because it doesn't require any Scarabs or difficult maps, destructive play is generally the best way to acquire your initial stash for Void Stones and Maven invitations early on. Here's an example of an Atlas passive tree I might use early on, and I'll link this down below. As you can see, this one is pretty bare bones, but I do have destructive play and all of the relevant special map nodes, vivid memories for synthesis maps, remnants of the past for Shaper and Elder Guardian maps, and conquered conquerors for Conqueror maps. And you can see that in the description text here on PoE Planner and in-game, it does list the base chance for maps to drop if you ever forget what the base chance is. And the wording is different between all of these things, but essentially what each one of them does is double your chance to get the specified map from final map bosses in each map. I also take some shrines and Nico for the extra juice because this is generally a high volume mapping kind of strategy. You aren't spending a lot of time in each map, you're focusing more on getting through each map quickly and getting the flat rewards in the form of the map drop chance from the boss. Now I also take this note here, Shaping the World in the center of the atlas, has a minor benefit of adding a chance for your maps to drop a tier higher, but the main thing here is that final map bosses have a 5% chance to drop an additional connected map. So this helps with your sustain early on. It is worth noting that it's not specified here in the help text, but final map bosses at a baseline default have a 30% chance to drop an additional connected map. So the basic strategy here behind destructive play is very straightforward. Run tier 14 plus maps and have the Maven witness the map. Clear as much of the map as you want and then fight the boss. During the boss fight, the Maven will spawn 1 to 3 additional map bosses. She'll always spawn at least one additional boss, but she'll spawn more if you clear more of the map. These bosses count as final map bosses, and so the chance to drop special maps applies to them, both the baseline and the additional chance here. The drawback, so to speak, is that the Maven won't witness a map whose boss you've already killed. So if you run a Dunes map and kill the map boss, you'll have to run other maps and then the Maven's invitation before you can have her witness the Dunes map again. Currently there is a way to circumvent this with bosses that have immunity phases. You start fighting the boss, the Maven will summon extra bosses, you fight those extra bosses, I should say. The main boss will then enter an immunity phase as you damage it, allowing you to clear off the extra bosses without actually killing the main boss, and then you just leave. What that means is the Maven never actually witnesses the map that you're running, so you can run the same map with her witnessing it repeatedly. The most common map people do this with is Silo. Silo is the perfect candidate to do this because the boss has multiple immunity phases, and the map is linear. So you end up spawning multiple extra bosses just because you end up clearing so many enemies along the way. And I can show an example of a Silo run in-game right now. Okay, so we're at the end of a Silo map now. I've got 23 monsters remaining, so I cleared a decent bit of the enemies along the way, or more than a decent bit, really. Again, as a byproduct of the map being fairly linear, you're just going to end up killing most of the enemies along the way. And if I start fighting the boss here, you can see even before I did anything really to the boss, the Maven summons in the extra bosses. We'll also reach a threshold at which it wants to enter an immunity phase. It'll start doing the flying around thing. Perfect opportunity to finish off the extra bosses, and then head out. So no extra maps here, unfortunately, but that's just how it is sometimes. You're not necessarily guaranteed, but your chance of getting at least one special map per map is going to be pretty high. And if I check my stash again for Silo maps, we can see that the map is not marked as having been witnessed by the Maven. Heading back into my example Atlas passive tree, you can see it is a fairly light 70 out of 132 points, so you can do this very early even if you're doing a kind of rush to tier 16 or high red maps kind of setup. As far as mechanics you could potentially pair with this, especially early on in the league, personally I like running Betrayal because since you don't need any sort of map quantity or difficulty and reward modifiers to the map whatsoever in order to get good special map rewards, you don't have to make Betrayal harder in order to deal with the extra difficulty of Betrayal. So, personally, early this league, especially with the Betrayal changes, I opted to pick up essentially all of the relevant Betrayal nodes that I wanted and run a bunch of Betrayal. So that's one potential avenue. If you're looking at this in the future or really anytime, any map mechanic that doesn't require a lot of time each map is going to be a good bet. I would say that Settlers, the ores are pretty good. Rogue markers, smugglers, caches are pretty good. Essences are less good now that Scarabs are so good for them. And Betrayal, as I just mentioned. Those would be my top recommendations personally. Now, there is this node over here, Chittering Champions, that gives final map bosses a 25% chance to drop an additional Scarab. And of course, that will apply to the Maven bosses as well. Personally, I wouldn't bother spending the points on this because on average you're getting half to one Scarab per map, and that is not really significant. You'll be dropping most likely more than that on the way to the boss anyways, even with no investment into Scarabs or anything like that. So personally, this just really isn't significant in the slightest, in my opinion. Now, if you are running the Silo map strategy or a similar map where the boss has immunity phases, and you do accidentally end up killing the bosses for the map, no worries there. You'll just have to finish your Maven Atlas invitation by filling up the rest of the 10 boss slots, running the invitation, or just opening it and then going in, coming back out. And that will reset, or maybe that's not true. I'm actually not sure what happens if you fail an invitation. I assume that you don't get another chance at it. So yeah, essentially you just need to clear the invitation and you'll have a chance to have the Maven witness the map that you're running again. Now, in terms of moving a little bit beyond the very initial map gathering, in my opinion, it's pretty much always worth running Destructive Play for invitation rotations. So say you're running Conqueror or Shaper or Elder Guardian rotations, those would be the main three. I would use Destructive Play if you were going to be doing a decent amount of those. even if it's literally just you're spending these 6 points to get to destructive play and doing not much else. Personally, I think that's worthwhile because you're always going to get at least one extra boss. And if you're, again, going for a high volume mapping strategy, which is what the invitation rotations would be, kind of high churn rate, get in, get out style of mapping, I would personally suggest always using destructive play for that. It's not relevant for the synthesis map rotations because they will not spawn in the synthesis maps. It only applies to the normal non-unique maps that you're running. Now, this last piece of information doesn't necessarily need destructive play, but it's more useful for the strategy than the next one. There are 2 Scarabs you can use if you've got a destructive play atlas set up. Domination Scarab of Terrors and the Horn Scarab of Pandemonium. So I've got both here to show as an example. The Domination Scarab of Terrors says that shrines in the area are also guarded by an Atlas boss. Modifiers to the final map boss also apply to those Atlas bosses. If you combine the Domination Scarab of Terrors with 4 normal Domination Scarabs, plus the map device for 3 additional shrines here, plus an Atlas setup for 2 additional shrines in total, you're looking at 13 additional Atlas bosses. So that's a lot more than the 2 to 4 that you're getting from destructive play, and you can run destructive play in addition to that. So instead of 2 to 4, you're looking at 15 to 17 map bosses. The Horn Scarab of Pandemonium does a similar thing, except it causes monster packs in area to have a 15% chance to be replaced by an Atlas boss. Same deal, final map boss effects apply to those bosses. It's unclear from my personal use and what I've seen whether this affects packs added by Scarabs or mechanics like shrines. There's a decent chance it only affects the native enemies on each map, but it doesn't hurt throwing some generic monster pack Scarabs in and seeing what happens, because again, you're most likely potentially even using this Scarab on its own with no other Scarabs, just to get in, clear the map, get some boss maps, and leaving. Keep in mind that both of these Scarabs are pretty rare, so they won't necessarily be your primary source of special maps, more so just a bonus whenever you happen to find one of them. The second strategy I have for you is aimed more at the end game. This is one for when your character is up to speed and you're ready to do more than just a handful of Guardian, Conqueror, or Synthesis invitations. You want to run them at high volume because you want to fight the bosses or fight the Maven. Once you're at that point, take a look at the Influencing Scarab of Conversion. This causes maps found in your maps to have a chance to drop at Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, Conqueror, or unique synthesized maps instead. The conversion chance has some randomness to it. There's a range, but I believe it's roughly 20%. So around 1 in 5 maps you find will be a special map. The type of map is determined on a per map basis, and you'll be able to check the map mods when you open the map in order to see which map that it is. So for example, I'll run a map here in a moment just to showcase it, but it might say maps found have a 17% chance to be unique synthesis maps instead. So unlike the last strategy, you will want to juice the maps and increase your general map drop chance in order to acquire more special maps. You'll want to run either Originator Tier 16 maps or Tier 17 maps that have 100% more map drop chance or higher. So, got an example map right here, Tier 16 Originator City Square map with 100% more maps found. Then you combine that with other Scarabs and mechanics to maximize the amount of maps that you're dropping. This league, as usual, I would recommend Abyss farming. Check out my video on that if you want to see how to set that up. And in the case that you are running Abyss, I would personally run 1 Edifice, 2 Abyss, 1 Edifice, 2 Abyss, one Cartography Scarab of Escalation, and the Influencing Scarab of Conversion. With Abyss on the map device, of course. If or once your build is strong enough, you can look at swapping out Abyss Scarabs for Risk Scarabs if you'd like. Finally, use an Atlas tree setup like the one I have here for Abyss, and most notably, you do want the higher map tier chance, all 3 clusters of them, and you want as much effect of explicit modifiers as you can get, as well as quantity of items found, because these all affect the amount of maps you'll be finding. And there's a pretty major difference here between this and the destructive play setup, because we aren't focusing on the final map boss rewards at all, not even a little bit. So we don't care about the points into the special map drop chance from the map boss, because we just aren't killing enough map bosses for that to be relevant. Those points are better spent on increasing, again, effect of explicit mods, getting item quantity even if it is pretty low, increasing the map drop chance, or in my opinion, even grabbing Scarab nodes. And one thing of note here, you want to not use singular focus for this, because there's a pretty good chance I was going to forget to inspect that and not have a very good showcase of this strategy. With singular focus, you will not have a very good time finding Shaper Guardian maps. I'm not sure if it'll eat the synthesis maps, it might, but then the Elder Guardian and Conqueror maps will only drop as your favorited map, but because not every map that drops will be your favorited map, you'll just get some of them eaten by this. And the same goes for destructive play. I'll have to mention that down in the comments since I forgot to discuss that earlier. If you aren't a big fan of Abyss, or if it gets nerfs at some point in the future, because it probably will, check out the Cartography Scarab of the Multitude. You can use up to 3 of these, which is perfect if you're dropping the 3 Abyss Scarabs I was suggesting, and these add a bunch of packs to the map that will have a very much increased chance of dropping maps. So this is another higher volume strategy. The maps will be individually less rewarding than the Abyss maps are at the moment, but they'll be much quicker. So the main bottleneck you'll have there is getting the Originator maps or Tier 17 maps, but the Scarabs are common enough that you really shouldn't have an issue once you've got a decent supply of Scarabs. For example, I have over 100 Influencing Scarabs at this point, and that is going to be hundreds of special maps, equaling, dozens of rotations, etc. And because I'll be running those invitations with destructive play, I'll get more maps back to sustain for even longer. Sorry about that. I will now run a quick demonstration here using the map I had earlier. I guess I'll leave out, no, I guess I'll use the Abyss Scarabs as well. No risk or anything like that, just to, again, kind of showcase what's going on. For altars, you would want to prioritize map duplication and quantity of items found, because that is added directly to the map, and therefore increases your maps that are dropping. So with my explicit effects scaled up, we're at 186% more maps found in the area, 10% increased maps for each map modifier. I didn't count the modifiers on the map, 5 or 6 probably. And if I can find it here, it can be a little hard to spot. This line here, 21% chance for maps tier 14 and above, found in area, drop as Shaper Guardian maps instead. So we'll just get right into it here. Kind of lagging a little bit, which is strange. Still working out the recording setup. That'll also be why my mic sounds, I've heard people describe it like I'm in a fish tank at times, or why I don't currently have audio. Still working out how best to balance the in-game audio versus my microphone audio. So look forward to that in the future, I suppose, if you end up sticking around. As you can see, though, I haven't gotten any converted maps, but I have had quite a number of just maps in general drop at this point, and all of those have a 21% chance to be converted to shaper maps at this point. So, if you are running a map that you can rush the boss, if you're using altars or want to focus on having more quantity altars available, then one potential avenue to do that is by killing the map boss first so you don't get any boss altars. And there's a Minotaur map. So I will run this map and pick up all of the maps just to give an idea of how many maps dropped in general and about how many special maps you could expect in your turn. Okay, a few minutes later, the map is finished, and here's what I got. I got a total of 27 normal Tier 16 maps, 1 Tier 17, a Tier 16 Originator map, and 5 Shaper Guardian maps. On top of other loot, currency, scarabs, typical stuff you get from a juicier map strategy. And I got slightly unlucky on the amount of special maps I got. At a 21% chance, I would have had more like 7 on average. But yeah, that is the strategy in a nutshell. It is worth mentioning, I know I kind of glossed over my atlas. I will link it down in the description below as well. These two nodes up here give you an increased chance for your maps to have memory influence, aka a chance to be originator maps, aka tier 16.5. So that is definitely worth taking anytime you're looking to drop a lot of different maps to help build up your supply of originator maps. Likewise, it's a pretty good way of getting tier 17 maps. It's about, I think, 1 in 16 to get your first tier 17 drop. 1 in 16 maps, that is. So that goes down after the first one, but using a strategy like this, it will not be uncommon at all to get 1 or more of each of a tier 17 and an originator map. It's actually pretty common that you can get 2 of each. So pretty decent way to not only sustain the maps for the strategy, but build up some tier 17s as well. If you are running these in originator maps, you could also run this in tier 17s, no problem. If you either don't care about the boss or you just think you can handle it even when you're juicing up the map a bit. But that is essentially the strategy. So in summary, early on in your progression and until you're fairly well established, I would say destructive play is an excellent way to finish your initial Void Stones and Maven invitations. Once you're looking to grind out a lot of Elder, Maven, Cyrus, or Shaper kills, say you want a specific unique like a Doppelganger guys, at that point I would aim to transition to a juiced map farming setup using the influencing Scarab of Conversion, and again, either the Abyss setup this league or whatever the flavor of the league kind of juicy farming setup is, or the Cartography Scarabs of the Multitude for a higher throughput method. If you're looking for advice on farming the Scarabs needed for these strategies, I would definitely check out, again, my recent video on Abyss, which is good for all of currency, Scarabs, and maps. Hope this video helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.